Over the next few sessions, we're going to take an abbreviated look at well-being and positive psychology, and how do we really get into making that part of what our culture is going to be. So let's get started. As we begin our conversation, I would like to ask you a favor. I'd like to ask that instead of thinking that we're talking about companies and organizations, that we're talking about you. We're talking about you in terms of your own human potential and what can you do and where can you go. So in speaking to you, if someone were to come up and say, listen, there's a way to get your brain and your actions to work in such a way that you're going to be more intelligent, you're going to be more creative, you're going to be more energized. What else? You're going to be physically healthier. You're going to have superior intrapersonal skills. You can talk better than I do. Your actions are going to make you better at getting and keeping the perfect job. You're going to be able to achieve superior productivity. You're going to be more resilient, and you're going to be less likely to ever burn out. Would you take that? Is that something you'd be interested in? What we know is strong, engaged, fulfilled persons make for strong organizations and successful organizations. And so as we look at the concept of positive psychology and the pathway to well-being, it makes sense that organizations are going to be looking for people that understand that concept and can employ that concept in their organizations. First, well-being, or being well. This is a little picture I took this morning as I was walking out of one of our clients. This happens to be a small heating, air conditioning, plumbing company that, guess what? They are an inspired organization. When you walk into this company, this is an 8 by 8 foot sign that every employee sees, and guess what? It isn't just a sign, they live it. As a company, they want every employee to thrive in their careers and overall well-being, not one or the other. It's all one thing, and they know it's one thing. To the degree that people are thriving in their well-being, they know that they're going to thrive in their careers. And if they're thriving in their careers, they know that they're going to be successful in an organization, and they live it and they breathe it. And there's a lot of other companies around the United States now that are starting to do that. But where did it come from? How are they getting there? Guess what? It was a journey. What a journey. What a journey to get here. Used to be the word was wellness. Now everywhere you go, everybody's saying well-being, where it was wellness. Now, I have to tell you, I'm kind of old, and I was lucky in that I started in the wellness field. I probably shouldn't tell you how long ago, but it was more than 25 years ago I started in the wellness field. Now, I went to work for a healthcare organization. I was hired because I was a professional athlete, and wellness was kind of thought of as fitness or something like that. It was okay, if you're fit, then you're well. And so they hired me at this hospital and this organization to put together a wellness program. Well, back then, wellness was pretty much marketing. Do good. You know, if we're doing something where we're telling our public that we're going to take care of you rather than put you in the hospital to treat some horrible disease, it did a lot of good things for the hospital. So they began by thinking of wellness as really a marketing program to reach out to the community and say some good, warm things. But really, there was some substance to wellness, even way back then when we were first getting started, because the concept of prevention and people taking care of themselves and preventing problems from happening, that made a lot of innate sense, you know. And so we began providing programs and services, a lot of the same kinds of programs and services that you see today that have to do with fitness and stress management and you know, reducing body weight and smoking cessation and all those kinds of things. But the problem was, back then, there was really no science behind it. The science was really limited. It was like if we went to a company and there was a really a forward-thinking CEO, he said, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's make sure our employees are healthy because it's a good idea. But back then, it was kind of a lot of puff and stuff. It was like, let's go do something good for this organization, for this company. And guess what? Everybody will be happy and we'll get some good mileage out of it. But the truth was, there was more to it than that. Back then, there was no WELCOA, there was no HERO organization. There weren't the organizations that were really pulling together all the information. But over a 25, 30-year period, that has come together. So now, as we start moving forward, we see that, yes, wellness is about prevention. It's about preventing problems before they occur. We know we can take care of issues that cause cancer and diabetes and Alzheimer's and all those things. So it's about prevention. More than that, it's about self-responsibility. Wellness was about you manage your own health. The medical organizations are your consultant. You manage your health. You're responsible for whether or not you're fit, whether you're obese, whether you smoke, whether you eat out of control. So it was about self-responsibility. The whole thing was around risk mitigation. Let's get rid of the risks so that we don't have the issues. And so it took hold, and it worked. And for a lot of companies, it made a difference. But as we went forward, we started seeing some things. So today, as we go forward, people know that, hey, I got to know my numbers. I got to know what my cholesterol is. I got to know what my BMI is. I got to know what causes me stress and how do I control it. And so knowing your numbers is really important. And so people start looking at that, and they're doing that. And so we start going that process. And now we can dollarize health. And so there's not hardly a company, in fact, there's over 80% of the companies in the United States have really robust wellness programs, and now well-being programs. And they're able to tell you, for example, how much a smoker costs that works for their company, how much is a smoker and also obese when you start combining risk factors. And all these things have been dollarized so where we can look at the medical costs and all those kind of things, but that was wellness. And it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. We still weren't making the impact we wanted to make. Yeah, the people that were getting involved, they were getting more fit. Companies were able to measure their health care costs, but we still weren't making the impact that we needed to make. And that's where the well-being thing started coming in. You know, where we really started taking hold. What was there besides risk mitigation? And so well-being came about, and this is about the book that took hold, put together by the Gallup organization and written by Tom Rath, where we first began to look at really concretely and empirically what really impacts our health. And we began to really define well-being, starting from wellness, which was pretty much about your health, but now we knew it was more than that. And so Tom Rath and Harder, they went through this arduous process where they went over to 150 countries. They actually sampled 98% of the population of the world and came up with the 5 elements that are the currency of life that matters. One of them was what we were calling wellness, the physical well-being. But what they found, whether you're in the United States or if you were in Afghanistan or Zimbabwe, there were these universal things that impacted people's health and their well-being. Career well-being, how you occupy your time or simply like what you do every day. So your career in the United States, that might be you're a CEO, but if you're in a village in Africa somewhere, you know, how you take care of what occupies your day is you're going to herd some goats or take care of the fields or whatever it was. That's still your career, and it's how you occupy your time or simply like what you're doing every day. That's important, and so they measure that and they can put a score on it. Social well-being, having strong relationships and love in your life, key component. Financial well-being, effectively managing your economic life. We know, for example, in the United States, that means about $70,000 for you to be really have financial well-being, because you can take care of all the things that need to be taken care of in terms of your home and your bills and all that kind of thing. But again, if you're in this village in Africa, maybe that means having 2 goats and a good roof over your head. You know, financial well-being means something really different places, but it does mean security. And so that's an important element. The physical well-being, we've talked about it, and that's really the heart of what wellness was all about. And it's really just having good health and enough energy to get things done on a daily basis. And finally, community well-being, a sense of engagement you have within the area that you live. How do you invest in your community? How does your community support you? And your community starts with the small area of your home. Your home is your community, and how well is that working for you? Out to your neighborhoods, out to your city, out to your country, out to your world. And so to the degree that you interface with the company. And what they found was all these are interconnected. You could have great physical health, but if you were wanting with any of the others, you went from being vibrant to suffering. And so this was really a seminal process where we really began to understand well-being. Now the employers, their goals have never changed quite a bit. They just become much more focused as we brought well-being to the forefront, become much more focused, and they can really start to measure things. They've always wanted to lower healthcare costs. They've always wanted to improve the quality of health. They want to improve employee safety, but now they're actually able to create a culture of well-being, which increases participation in wellness programs that impacts that health. So you see all of these things, but it all kind of comes down to, if you make all these things work, do you increase productivity? That's usually how an employer will think. But we're really looking at this culture, this inspired culture, as changing things a little bit. Over the years, wellness was a dynamic process where even the medical organizations began to change, where prevention became the word of the day. And then well-being came into focus, and now we know there's more to it. There's more to being fulfilled and being able to be vibrant in those kinds of things. But what we have known all along is, gosh, I guess we don't really know how to do it. Because almost no matter what we've done, the programs and the services, there's isolated places where companies have done great things for short periods of times, and there's big dollars that have been made, and there's big impact that's been made on health-related issues. But pretty much when we're talking in the population health concept, we're talking about a big population. Pretty much 20% of the people are going to be involved and make the change. 60% want to make the change, but boy, it's a rough go, and we really got to work and work and work. But this is really where a lot of the potential is. We work and put together really good programs and services for them. We can really make an impact. And then 20% kind of don't care. They don't care because it's not part of their value system or whatever it might be. And so, what do we do? Where do we go? How are we going to make a difference? And so that's where positive psychology comes into play. So we know a little bit about wellness, and then well-being comes into focus, and we know there's some real hay to be made. But we still aren't making the progress that we wanted to make. Along comes this concept of positive psychology. Dr. Martin Seligman, the founder of positive psychology, as he's known in the United States, is also the director of Positive Psychology Center at the University of Pennsylvania, and he's the past president of the American Psychological Association. He knows what he's talking about. Dr. Seligman, for years, like most psychiatrists and psychologists, worked with sick people. He worked with people depressed, psychotic, all the issues where from a mental health perspective, you're starting at kind of okay and they go down fast, and how do we fix them? And what he saw was, instead of talking about what's wrong with somebody, let's start seeing what's right with somebody. What's right with somebody? Let's start from zero and go the other way. And let's see, how can we really help somebody reach their potential? So how do you take somebody that's good and solid, and how can they really reach their potential in terms of making them the best person they can be, the real human performance model? And that's where positive psychology started. So we put together this whole study system of, let's start with what's right with you, and rather than what's wrong with you, and move from that point and go forward. So he found that there's differences between pleasure and happiness, and how to get more happiness into your life. So the positive psychology model was really looking at what motivates people and how can we tap into those motivations to put together a behavioral model where they really can look at wellness, look at well-being, make the changes that need to be made so they can reach their potential as human beings. A lot of times it starts with the word happiness. And so some people say happiness, that's kind of one of the dwarfs was happy. You had all this happiness. But happiness, really, we're talking about a thriving organization. And you as an individual, do you thrive? Are you engaged? Are you fulfilled? Fulfilled? Are you purpose-driven? Do you have a purpose, and are you driven by that? Are you vibrant? Are you energetic? So happy is a measurable thing that can be looked at and have elements of measurement about it, around it. Now, as Dr. Seligman put together the first phases of how to look at positive psychology, there were 4 pillars. And this is the real key to positive psychology. The first one is, again, we're starting with what's right with you. That means know your strengths, values, and connect with them often. So instead of starting with your weaknesses, you start with your strengths. So it's important to know what your strengths are, what your values are, what your interests are, and you lay the foundation and the groundwork around that. Second, you create and maintain social relationships. Nobody does anything well in a solitary situation for very long. As in the study where we looked at the blue zones, the places all around the world where people live longer than they do any place else, one of the most important things was their social structure. Do they have people around them that they love and they care for, and people love and care for them? So create and maintain social relationships. Continue to grow through intentional activities. The key word there is intentional. Don't just let life fall on you. You decide through your strengths and your interests and your values, what are the things that you need to do to grow? And you attach yourself to something larger than yourself. These are the 4 pillars to the whole concept of positive psychology. We have this puzzle of motivation. When we put together all these wellness programs and we got into the well-being programs, we're having trouble motivating people. We go into an organization and you put together this great program and you have physical facilities for people to work out in and good food and gosh, nobody participated. And we find there's a puzzle between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic being the carrot and the stick, where you do it or else. Here's some kind of prize if you do it. Versus the intrinsic, which is all about your values. You do something because it matters to you, because it's important, because it's interesting. Positive psychology concentrates on the intrinsic motivation. People do it because it matters to them. When you put together a culture of positive psychology, all of a sudden people know what matters. They find out what it is. It's important, it's interesting, and it's intrinsic. Now, we've worked with a lot of companies, right now it's not that extrinsic doesn't work. It works in many situations. Right now we're having, you can go across the country and you see premium differentials based upon whether or not you participate in a weight management program, or whether you smoke or whether you don't. That gets people started, but over a lifetime, if people are really going to make a difference, it has to be an intrinsic value for them for it to work. So this puzzle of motivation is pretty important. To really get into the research on that, Daniel Pink has written a couple of books about it. And you can see that in some situations where companies have offered extrinsic motivators, like if you do X, then you're going to get a card to go buy stuff at Costco or whatever it is, they actually see that it's had a negative effect. So we're really looking at that a lot closer, but the key to this is positive psychology is based upon intrinsic motivations. It's all based upon what your values are and what your strengths are and what your interests are. When we put in place positive psychology, there is empirical evidence and measurable outcomes that are irrefutable. Studies have shown positive psychology results in individuals that are physically healthier. You can go from site to site to site where the culture is an inspired positive psychology culture, and the employees are physically healthier, they're mentally healthier with less stress, they cope better in the job, they have fewer emergency room visits, doctor calls, they take less medication, they miss fewer days of work, and on you see all these things, higher performance evaluations, less likely to leave the organization, perform better customer service, are less likely to smoke or eat unhealthy, are better able to solve conflicts, they have superior interpersonal skills, They perform acts of altruism and conscientiousness. How would you like to be in an organization where people are really trying to do things good all the time? They're more likely to participate in the activities that increase well-being. So positive psychology, how does it do that? Why is that happening where positive psychology is being used as part of the program? One of the things that the individuals studying positive psychology have found as they've gone through all this, it's pretty amazing. First of all, just like we know that as we did all the wellness measurements, we know that about 70% of the health problems that we have in the country, and 70 cents of every dollar, is preventable. And that's what's driven a lot of this. We know that the things that are preventable are being overweight and having high blood lipids and those kinds of things. Well, it's kind of this funny mirror that when we got into what determines happiness, what they found was, first of all, about half of it is genetic. Just like your cholesterol, if you have high cholesterol, pretty good chance that's a genetic thing that you got from your mom and dad. Well, on the happiness measurement scale, about 50% of where you are is genetic. You come with a certain disposition. About 10% of it is environmental. Most people think that's much more. That's your job, that's your family situation, that's the city that you live in. It's all those things that people really think impact them so much. Happiness has this plasticity situation. 40% of your happiness and the positive scale you have is under your control with the programs and technologies and the different behavioral things that have been put together by the positive psychology scientists, and you have control of what determines your happiness. That's a magic number, a magic opportunity, and something that really means much to companies that want to create a different kind of culture. Dr. Seligman has tried to put together a way for us to look at positive psychology in such a way that there really were the elements that as we began to format these kinds of things in organizations, makes a lot of sense. And he came up with this acronym, PERMA: positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. So these are the elements of positive psychology and how they fit into the well-being model. So positive emotion, these are easy actions to increase positive emotions. So what you start to see is positive psychology, as we implement it in our cultures, it's something that can be done pretty straightforward without a ton of effort and make a big impact. So positive emotions are things like gratitude exercises. Just being thankful for things. So if you go on to a TED Talk, and there's one on gratitude, and you go through that process with Sean Aker and look up his TED Talk, a great TED Talk, and you'll see the unbelievable impact that's made just by doing gratitude exercise. Simple, random acts of kindness. Doing that on a daily basis. Journaling, laughter. These are simple, positive ways of impacting positive emotion that have been shown to make a big impact. The E in PERMA stands for engagement. So what we were talking about engaging in intentional activities. So you're in charge of your life. So what does that mean? It's best when you are connected to your own strengths and values, but you engage into intentional activities that all have to do with learning, volunteerism, active recreation, self-development. So when you're looking at those things that help you grow. So in the positive psychology model, the engagement process is to do those things that help you learn. It's getting involved in volunteerism and helping your community. And self-development, both physically, your expressionally, and your spiritually. So that's the engagement component. The R for PERMA stands for relationships. And we've already talked about that a little bit. Your relationships are so important. One of the things they find is that in employees who have a best friend at work, you got your best buddy at work, your best girlfriend at work, 7 times more likely to engage in their work, and they have fewer accidents. They're more engaged with the customers that they come in contact with, and are more likely to innovate and share new ideas. Just because you have a good friend at work. The social connectedness is one of the things that is empirically measured that we can make such a difference in our lives. Meaning, or purpose. As we're looking at attaching ourselves to something larger than ourselves, whether it's your religion, whether it's your volunteering, the career, your family, you have to know what is your purpose and what is your meaning in life. And the people that do and have intentional activities around that meaning, they're the ones that are making the big impact. So meaning comes from serving something larger than yourself and connect. And the really important part as we get into this, like how do companies make this available to individuals and how we put this in place in a company, it's making sure that you know that each employee, each one of us knows what our strengths and values are and know what our passions are, our interests and our causes, and we work within that. The last one on PERMA is A for accomplishment. We know that it's important to set and accomplish goals, and that again is a measure, it's essential at all stages of life, and you can utilize positive attributes to broaden and build toward more challenging goals. What that means is, what we found is some people set goals that are unachievable, and when you go through a process that is developed by the positive psychologists of broaden and build, you might start with something simple. Say for example you want to run a marathon. Well, that might be way too much, but in the build and broaden model, you might start by learning how to knit. Doesn't even have to be an athletic event, because you master that process and all of a sudden you're moving down the road. So positive psychology strategies lead to happy employees. We know that. We can measure that. It's empirical. But does it matter? Does it matter if we have happy employees? Does it matter that the culture is, the organizational culture is full of happy employees? Well, the studies show happy employees are more willing to help out coworkers and customers. Well, that'd be pretty good in a company, wouldn't it? You're actually more willing to help. They describe their job in a more positive light instead of going home and say, geez, you just do it. Now all of a sudden there's some positivity to it. They feel more committed to their organization. They want the organization to make a difference. Happy employees receive better ratings from their supervisors and their peers. They're seen by everybody as being more effective. They get more social support from colleagues and supervisors. People are more willing to reach out to them. They cope better with organizational change. You know, change is every day at work. You have to deal with it. They deal with it. They make decisions more efficiently. They experience less conflict working with teams, and they report greater job satisfaction. Those are the outcomes of it. That's not enough. Some of the other traits, they're more likely to pursue new goals as the company has more opportunities. They have superior interpersonal skills. They're more likely to enter novel situations. They perform acts of altruism, courtesy more often. Pretty simple in the workplace. Somebody actually is courteous to you. The difference that it makes. They create success because they are happy. They aren't happy because they create success. They create success because they are happy. They give more to charity and are more likely to donate blood. Wow. And they live longer with a higher quality of life. All those are measurable points that we see. Now there is a cost to unhappiness that has been measured based on a Gallup Management Journal. Lower productivity due to being disengaged costs the businesses around $300 billion every year. Of the 24.7 million, or 19% of the unhappy workers that were measured in the United States, they missed 86.5 million more work days. 75% of all workers report feeling detached from their work, and each unhappy worker costs the company around $13,000 per year. It almost makes you not want to have employees because it adds up so fast. Pretty soon you're in the negative. So that's the high cost of happiness. How would a company that wanted to embark on a well-being strategy, how would they employ positive psychology? What are some of the techniques and science that has been developed and discovered that can be employed? There's many, and it's still a work in progress. This is a fountain of information that's being developed by the people in the background right now that are really measuring positive psychology because it has such a major impact. But we look at things like goal motivation, making sure that Instead of just giving somebody a goal, it's a goal that's based around their strengths and their values. If that's a process, you can the accomplishment is directly tied to how people feel about themselves, their self-efficacy. The belief that we have the ability to accomplish a task or a goal is a starting block to take you to the next task or goal, to the harder task or goal. And this whole goal motivation begins to work. So the positive psychology people have developed models and systems for putting in place goal motivation practices and being able to build this self-efficacy around values and strengths. The values establish the intrinsic motivations, so it's done over and over a lifetime, and using your strengths establishes these things as mastery experiences that you can lean on and build on. So that's one whole arena of technique that's used in the corporate marketplace. The role of hope theory. There's nothing worse than having a hope that's dashed. But having a hope that's realized is such a building experience. It's such a positive experience. And what has been created is hope theory, which is a way to make sure people can identify what their hopes are and put a program, a strategy around that hope, where they look at the agencies and the pathways that are needed to make that hope possible. It's a very fundamental process that can be integrated into many things at the work site and in personal lives. There's all kinds of easy exercises that we talked about that have tremendous impact. Gratitude exercises, simple random acts of kindness that we mentioned, journaling. These are things that have been measured in the positive psychology arena that just go on and on. We talked a little bit about the broaden and build that was developed by Fredrickson, where you broaden yourself with successes in one area that carries over into another area. So you can start with something very simple and straightforward, and within your strengths and within your interests, make sure you are successful in that, and it builds on to the next and the next. And what we find is, as we reflect on our strengths and the success, we start by doing the things that we enjoy, we can move on to the harder things. And so there are programs and methods for putting these into place. So the pathway to positive psychology, to well-being, uses a lot of these tools and strategies. As we look in a company, and the first pillar is know your strengths and values and connect with them often. How do you put that in place in an organization? That's part of the discovery process. What has been put online now are all these different ways to help employers help their employees discover what their strengths, their values, their interests are, action portfolios together for them, where they can really discover what's right with them, what are their strengths, what are their values, and begin from there. The second pillar is strive to create and maintain social relationships, the social community, and a active network support system. The world's changing, and for us old guys, it's really changing because everything now is about Twitter and Facebook and all those things. But what's really happened is there's all these new tools to create an active network support. Actually, I saw just in the news today, Queen Elizabeth sent her first tweet today. Did you see that? And the first tweet she got back was, "It's nice to see, it's adorable to see these old people trying to use social media." Well, they're using some of these social media active network support systems to make sure that people can really activate and be exposed to the different services and programs. So we strive to create and maintain social relationships, and one of the tools is the active network support system, and you see that really happening for a lot of companies. Attach yourself to something larger than yourself. Help people understand what their purpose and their meaning is. Give them tools for that, and that's what the organizations are doing. There's processes to go through where people can start to evaluate and understand really what is their purpose in life, what is their meaning of their life, and really put together their strengths and interests around that. And finally, continue to grow through intentional activities in the areas of learning, volunteerism, active recreation, and self-development. Now you're starting to look at some of the more traditional things that have been done in the wellness field, where you provide programs and activities, but you accentuate that with the social active network support and a lot of those other things. Now, in the companies that are doing these kind of things, there's an algorithmic integration of all that. In other words, if we're going to put together for an individual, everybody is different. So a learning program for one person in the company needs the other person, because of their interests and their strengths, they need a different learning program. So there are algorithm integrations where all of this information can go into a database, and then the different people in the company can begin to concentrate on things that fit their profile, their strengths, their values, their interests, and what they want to do. So these are the things that companies are doing now to create the strategies to really put the positive psychology model into place. As we went through a process that took almost 5 decades, over a 5-decade process, we started to really try to plant wellness into employer organizations so that they could make a difference with the health of their employees and ultimately hit the bottom line. We grew from that over this period of time where well-being came into place, and really took hold, because we see the power and the strength that it has to really make a situation where there's a vibrant, flourishing employee population. But we were still missing something. And what's happening is positive psychology and well-being have come together. They've meshed where it's almost the same thing. When you talk positive psychology and the concepts that are employed to really make sure that somebody is more creative, has the energy, their intellect is up, those are the same things that go into the components of well-being. When we look at career well-being, social well-being, community well-being, what we found is that positive psychology, well-being, they're together and they work. Thank you.